welcome to this week's programme. And my guests are Sharon Murphy from Cork and Neil Dennehy from Tipperary. But before I start to chat with them, earlier this week, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change published its latest report, and the news is grim. We're getting closer and closer to a tipping point beyond which there will be no going back. And Sharon and Neil, even though they have never met, they are each in their own way living in a way that, if it's rolled out across the country, will go a long way towards helping us to tackle climate change. I've got to know Sharon and Neil in recent months, and I really think that what they are doing is worth listening to, and I really believe that it is a model that we can use nationwide. So Neil and Sharon, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having us, Anna.
Pleasure.
So maybe we might begin by getting each of you to tell us just briefly about yourself and your background. So maybe if I begin with you, Sharon.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, I've been a teacher for 31 years in usually in emerging fields of things that weren't quite well known, leisure and recreation, when you had to explain what a leisure centre was, and in the last few years emergency services, and anything new that came along I'd always be interested in it. But my health took a turn in the last 2 years, and my fibromyalgia, which I'd been managing, came back. So I've been out from full-time work and I'm getting ready to retire. So it's been in those last couple of years that I've had a bit more time and, you know, been able to volunteer, because when your health is a bit up and down, volunteering is the best way to be able to make a contribution, because if you don't turn up, you're not particularly letting anyone down, like at work, and you can give when you can give the energy. So so in the last 2 years, particularly 2 to 3 years, I've been really getting involved in the community and growing ideas and growing little projects. Because you know, okay. once a bossy teacher, always a bossy teacher.
Well, Sharon, I'll come back to you in a moment or two and we can explore that further, and thank you so much for that. Neil, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, and I've worked in healthcare myself for 24 years now. I started out as a fitness instructor, and then I went into neuromuscular physical therapy, and I've had a clinic there for the last 16 years in Kavanagh and Thurles in Tip. I've always had an interest in holistic health and well-being, you know, not just the physical, but the mental and the emotional as well. And I published a book 2 years ago on practical means to take care of these, you know, the mental, the physical and the emotional, and a little bit on the spiritual as well. How can we kind of bring that in as part of it too. Excuse me, but also, you know, going forward, not just our own well-being, but around us and the environment as well, because we can't survive without it. And, you know, if we do things wrong, it won't survive with us. So, you know, kind of a broad spectrum of what it means to be well in general. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing for the last while.
Okay, so I look forward to chatting to you in a little while about what you have been doing. So Sharon, tell me about the projects that you have got involved in your local community.
Well, the first one was a couple of years ago. We started a craft shop on the basis of it being a collective. And that was my first real involvement in a community-driven enterprise. It was based on an idea I came across in Courtmacsherry, where I used to live, where they started a cooperative shop. The last shop in the village was closing down, and it would have meant everyone travelling to Timoleague for all the basics. So the community got together, they formed a cooperative. They all have shares, 300 of the locals have a share in the shop, and they volunteer their time a couple of shifts a week to keep the shop going. And they've been in operation now for 3.5 years, and they make a profit. And it's a fabulous little shop. It's all things to all people down there. So with that in mind, a local councillor approached me when my partner and a few friends were looking for space to display their craft and their art and their jewellery. So they were going around to trade shows and that, but it's very difficult to get into a gallery and make any kind of decent money out of it because the commission that the galleries charge is very high. But there was a fund available at the time that Marcia Dalton, our local councillor, found that hadn't been claimed. It was past the deadline and the time was very short to fund a pop-up shop. So very quickly we got 7 crafters together and we based it on the collective idea that I had seen in the shop in Court McSherry, and that shop has been running now for 3 years, and we have had, I think, probably over 40 crafters over the years represented, and it works on a very simple basis of the crafters keep 80%, the shop takes 20%. We pay a very small rent because the shop has been for sale as long as we've been in it. We have a fabulous manager who's on a different, on a widow's pension actually. So she works unbelievably long hours for a very small amount of money from the shop. And we have this lovely energy of 30 to 40 people making a small amount of money. Women who can stay at home with their kids, they don't need to travel out. They're not going to make a fortune, but they make, some make very little, some make quite a bit. And it's just a lovely model, and it's a lovely local enterprise to have. And we called it Passage West Creates. But my interest for years has been food production and so on. So I took the idea from the shop then, and I always wanted to create Passage West Creates Food, was to be our next enterprise. So how I did it was, the best laid plans. I had kind of came at it sideways. So when lockdown happened and people were traveling, just the only travel people were doing was to the big local shopping centre, and all our food options were very much narrowed, and farmers markets and things and allotments closed and all of that. We did a dry run with Neighbour Food, which I don't know if you're aware of it, but just briefly, it's a great model. So it's a commercial enterprise. A guy called Jack Crotty from Cork has been instrumental in growing it, and I would know Jack for years. So again, it works on a very similar principle, that you set up an online market. The producer who provides the food gets 80%, the Neighbour Food organisation get 10%, and the host, which ordinarily would have been me, gets 10%. But I approached our local men's shed, and they were very helpful and open to the idea. And because I was on a payment from work and I can't officially work, I just said, well, I'll do it and I'll give the money back to the community. So I did that for a couple of weeks, and a friend joined, and another person I never knew joined, and another person. So we now have a team of 7 volunteers, and we started then, we were kind of going, God, we have a bit of money now, what do we do next? So the next plan was, there was a kitchen, quite a derelict kitchen in the men's shed, and we thought, well, yeah, if we did up the kitchen with the money, it would be a resource for the community and we might be able to do something with it. So what we have now is, we have done up the kitchen, we have it registered with the HSE, we have all the HACCP procedures that you need in place, and right next door we have a Neighbour Food online market. So people can order online and come to collect on a Thursday. And what we've provided now is a kitchen, so that anyone, let's say Anna, you're a baker and you'd like to provide into Neighbour Food, to register your house is tricky, especially if you have animals, you can't register your own kitchen. So what we've done is just provided a facility where anyone who can come in, they don't need to worry about the registration. We'll give them the HACCP training. Everything is there. They just come in, they cook, and they can literally provide food, finished food, into a market that happens right next door. And how Neighbour Food works is, the suppliers come to us all day Thursday. By 5 o'clock, the boxes are filled with what people have ordered online, and then we just hand them over to the customers from 5 o'clock to 6:30. So it's just kind of pipelined local food. But since we started Neighbour Food in November, we have generated €100,000 of local food sales, where there was nothing.
That is absolutely incredible. And I suppose tying it in then with climate change and reducing our carbon footprint, people are consuming the food that is being produced locally. They're not consuming food that has been flown in from South America or from Asia. It's all locally produced food. And, it's such a simple model that could be replicated right across the country.
And the beauty of it is, Tom, who makes sourdough bread in his kitchen in Crosshaven with salt, flour and water, would never otherwise have a viable market to sustain that business. But because we're not the only neighbour food market on a Thursday, Jack has been very clever. There are 7 markets in a circuit around Cork on a Thursday: Carrigaline, Middleton, Kinsale and so on. So in one day, a single producer can reach, I'm guessing, probably about 800 customers who we know buy good food, organic food where possible, sustain, and all of the sustainability and the ethos of precious resources and carefully used and all of that. That's all built into how Neighbour Food choose the producers. We look for sustainable packaging. All of those things are already built into it. So it gives the small producers a really simple route to market as well. So it's encouraging the local producers. And then we benefit from getting local food.
Yeah, it's amazing. Do you have any idea how many people have found employment through this model?
Well, we're the only volunteer one, and Jack would on his books have, I think, about 65 markets. Now I know some of them aren't actually operating, but at a minimum that must mean there's a host making money in each of those other markets as a commercial enterprise. And it's a day's work. It's probably 2 to 3 days work in the week, but each host would be getting a very viable income out of that. And then, would probably, like, we have a delivery driver. We charge a £5 for deliveries. He gets the £5. He gets 30 or 40 quid. He's the only one who takes payment from our thing because it's fair. He's driving around, but he's a young father. It's an extra couple of bob in his pocket. So I would say there's a lot of part-time employment in a lot of them across the country. And then obviously there's more work for the producers. They're getting more income out of it as well.
Okay, Sharon, that's a fascinating story, and I will come back to you. Neil, tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Tipperary.
So what we've been doing is a little bit less industrious than Sharon's. Sharon, yours sounds fantastic. Fair play to you for all that work. It's brilliant. I suppose mine has been a bit more from the health point of view, in that, and environmentally conscious as well, in that I was talking to some people about setting up a community garden in a local farm. Now, it actually didn't take off at the time, but it kind of pushed me on to do my own bit first. I said I'll get my own garden sorted first and then go and talk to other people when I have a bit more personal experience. So I put up a polytunnel and some raised beds, and I'm new to growing, but the polytunnel is just bursting at the moment, so from a health point of view, it's all organic. I know exactly what's in it and what's on it and what I'm getting. And sure, of course, the flavors are only fantastic, and I only have to go out and pick up a salad, whatever I want, whenever I want it, which is fantastic. We've linked in with some other people as well who are growing their own as well, and we're sharing tips and we're learning from each other, and we're sharing seeds. And when somebody has a bit more than somebody else, we share that on, so it's developing that local community as well, and we're learning as we go. So we're becoming a bit more self-sufficient, which is lovely too. You're not relying on the supermarkets and the food chains all the time and stuff coming from all over the world. You're getting it yourself at home. I also put together a small solar kit, and I didn't have any experience in that, so I'm learning about amps and ohms and things like that. But again, the self-sufficiency, to be able to have some bit of power myself, if we had a power cut or anything, that you'd have something to fall back on and an understanding of how to do it. Because I have a long-term plan for a health and wellness centre that would be multidisciplinary, but also include a cafe that sold healthy food, just show people you can eat well and eat healthy, that would have its own organic gardens there to pull produce from, but also educate from. So you're really looking at healthcare from a natural perspective, that all of these things would be available, and to make these things normalized, you know, and it's local. We don't have to go abroad for world-class healthcare and wellness. It's all here. We have it all here with fantastic practitioners and, you know, growers and people who really know what they're doing locally, you know. So it's kind of a stepping stone towards more of that in our own area.
Neil, I know that you're just unbelievably passionate about food, and you see food and the food that we consume as medicine. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, everybody's heard the phrase, you are what you eat. Sometimes people think about that if you eat fat, get fat, and then it doesn't go any further than that. But I mean, literally every cell in our body is made from the foods that we consume, and we're changing cells all the time. We grow new skin every couple of months, you know, we're growing new blood cells every couple of months. The whole body is cleared out and replaced by new ones. So if we want to have skin cells and muscle cells and blood cells and brain cells that are working well as they possibly can, we need to feed the body with really good stuff. It's got to have the raw materials. And everything in our body will show through on that. Now, I'm not saying nutrition will heal everything, but it creates an awful lot of good health, and it's really good for immune systems. And sure, if we're talking about anything at the moment, immunity is a key thing, you know, when we're talking about viruses, you know, that's all encompassing, but all health is important. And I really feel that if we can look after our nutrition, the basics, nutrition, so good healthy food that tastes good, it should always taste good as well, and a little bit of exercise and maybe a little bit of meditation for calm and good sleep, all the basics, good quality water, that covers a multitude, an absolute multitude of our health needs. And then after that, we can deal, if there's anything to deal with, we can deal with the others, you know.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw out a question that both of you can, I suppose, share your thoughts on. It just strikes me that how we're living is actually very bad for our health, and it's bad for our environment. And if we come back to a more community-based way of living, producing our own food, producing our energy locally, and being mindful of our health, in so doing, we will automatically then, I suppose, be living in a way that is starting to heal the planet. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe Sharon.
Okay, absolutely. As you were talking there, I'm reminded of the kind of a guiding principle that, because we've formed an awful lot of other networks in this time and support networks and so on. And the principle that comes to mind is the Ubuntu principle. I don't know if you know it, Michael Tellinger talks about it. It's an African principle of abundance. And a lot of what we found is that a lot of the networks we've been building around things like healthcare, you know, and food and homeschooling's been a big issue for people as well, is when you form these networks, I'm sure, Neil, you find this as well, when people start to get involved, when you're talking about what you bring to the group, you know, when people come from their passion, from what their skill is, we're all learning very quickly. We're making the most of resources. You know, 2 hours of Neil's expertise is worth 8 hours of me trying to do what he does and I don't do as well. So, you know, I find that that's been a crucial thing in terms of coming together in support and networks, is that start where you are, start with the resources that you have. You know, we started with a broken kitchen, and you know, you couldn't have had that plan unless you were in that place. So I think it's starting with where we are, what are our resources? And I think one of the unfortunate things that we see with growing, I had the same issue with you, Neil, trying to get a community garden going, is trying to get the land in the first place, because it's being used for a very globalist system of subsidies and grants, and it's not producing the food that we need. I'm watching a field of barley across the way from me that's been harvested, and somebody told me the farmer will get somewhere between 10 and 100 euro for all of that work, and I've watched it for the last 6 months. Whereas we have a fabulous grower here in Cork. She's a commercial grower, and on 8 acres she employs 8 people and feeds 240 families with chemical-free vegetables. So that's the difference that I see in terms of what we should be doing to make the best of the land and to network. And to me, the principles are what resources have we, and we start there, and not to be wasting resources in driving food around, and the health benefits that come from that is just coming in together in community in any setting, whatever the topic is the wellness that comes from that, of feeling that you make a contribution. When we're up in the men's shed, we have a 12-year-old who's won an environmental prize. She's weeding the beds, while the 70-year-old who runs the men's shed is walking around with her, and they're discussing what's a weed and what's staying or whatever. And that's a community, the wellness that's coming out of that for them. And then we have another friend who comes in and goes, you know, you can eat that weed and this is good for that health. And we have networks that have grown up around healthcare, you know, using herbal medicines and things like that, with everybody sharing their expertise. And then you just make the most of what's on your doorstep, without having to worry about the rest of it. So that's what I'm finding. So it's happening very easily because the need is there. People recognize the need. We need that small, local, self-sufficient community. And sometimes it's a mental support, an emotional support, a spiritual support, and sometimes it's a tangible turn up and do your job support. But in all ways, that makes us more resilient. And, you know, Neil, I'm sure you'd echo this, that a sick person is a very costly thing on our state, on our, you know, on our resources. I was very sick for 10 years with bad fibromyalgia, and it cost me and my family financially, and it cost the people around me. So eating well, drinking good water, doing the meditation, looking after myself, and that spreading out into the community, it's very cost efficient, as well as being very good for everybody. Do you know?
Okay, Neil, I see you nodding in agreement.
Yeah, look, Sharon hit on some very important points. We've done things, this old system, as in the most recent system, the globalist system, we've enough time put down there to see that it doesn't work for us. It's simply not working on so many levels. It's not working individually. It's not working for our health, our stress levels. It's not working financially for the producers. It's just not, it's working for a very small few at the top of the pyramid, and it's not working for most of the rest. So we need to change. We need to bring in some of the older systems ways, the things that did work, the more local stuff, the homegrown, the grassroots stuff. Get that going, get our communities, look out for each other, have the health benefits, the energy benefits, the fulfillment that comes with it, the happiness that you're not on the hamster wheel, but you're actually part of a nice collective, and just get back to those things. Doesn't mean we have to forego some of the new stuff we've got. You know, there's certain systems and structures that work. There's technology. I love a bit of technology. We're here talking to each other now because of it. You know, we don't have to go back to smoke signals, but we can take the best of what did work in the past, that older generations talk about, you know, how good it was in certain ways. Take the best of what we have, the new stuff, and just bring them together and drop the rest. Just let it go. We've seen it doesn't work. It's not efficient. Let it go, move on, you know. And this whole change, like there's so much change going on over the last year and a half anyway. We know we can change like that. When change comes upon us, we know we can change just like that. And it has pushed a lot of us to look for greater change because, you know, people have concerns about the way things are. We see how reliant we are on this system, and we're too reliant in a lot of ways. You know, we're very much reliant on what certain people decide is how things should be done. And a lot of us are thinking, you know what, I don't want to be so reliant anymore. I want a bit more self-reliance, a bit more self-governance. And that's how you do it. I don't feel that you do it, and all due respect to anyone who protests and, you know, goes that route. But I personally don't like the idea of going asking politicians for permission to live my life in a way that works. Because really that's what I'm doing if I go to protest. I'm asking somebody else to change the rules. I prefer the idea of deciding this is how I want to do things. And there's other people around me who want to do things the same way, and let's do it. And let's show that it works, you know?
Yes, that is just a brilliant concept. And Buckminster Fuller said, you know, let's not put our energy into tearing down the old, rather put our energy into creating something new so that the old way of living becomes obsolete. So our time, unfortunately, is running out. And I'd like to finish by asking each of you what advice you would have for our viewers that are watching in and, you know, they're saying, this is wonderful. I'd love to be part of a group that is doing something like this. So what advice would you have for our viewers that are watching and that would love to get involved in what you're doing?
I would say find other people, even one other person in your community who feels somewhat like you do, and start the conversation, because I think for every community it'll probably be a different starting point. You know, I'm sure like there are other communities doing amazing work as well, and reach out to people. I'll happily talk to anyone of you can, you know, but I think it's starting a conversation with even one other person and saying, what could we do from here? And take the ideas, because one size won't fit all. That's the whole point. You know, under Brehon law, different laws applied in different places, even because different societies had different needs. So I think it's have a conversation with one or two people, build it, and they will come. You know, it could be starting around a polytunnel. It could be start a neighbour food. You know, any of those options. There are probably loads of others we're not even thinking of, but just start a conversation with someone. Link into groups. There's fantastic groups online and fantastic support online for this. So just get it started. As I said earlier, start where you are with what you have.
That's absolutely brilliant. I mean, what could be simpler? Start where you are. Neil, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, look, very similar. I mean, Sharon took the words out of my mouth about connecting with people. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's the knowledge and the expertise is already there. And even the land is there. If you don't have land yourself, somebody else has. So you could offer to come and help them, say that you want to learn how to grow. Can I come and help you on your ground? Maybe you'll get some of the produce out of it. Maybe you'll just come away with skills that you didn't have before and an understanding that you can do these things. I started out connecting with people through Facebook when I saw other people who had similar thoughts or similar posts to mine. I just reached out. I sent them a message to say, like, I really like what you're saying. I think we're on the same page. Would you like to meet up for a walk and a talk, and we'll just have a chat and see what comes of it? And not everybody did meet, but a lot did, because they're like-minded. We're thinking on the same page. You get on straight away. It's like somebody you've known all your life, you know. And then things come of it, and you just grow your network, your connections. And then I was introducing people to other people. So we're all on the same page. And before you know it, you have a community, you know, and it's lovely. It's really nice to have. It's a really good thing in so many ways. So many ways.
Well, that is a beautiful, positive note on which to end our conversation this evening. And I want to thank you sincerely, Sharon and Neil, for taking the time out to chat to me. And I'd also like to thank you, the viewer, for taking the time to watch this video. And I have a little request. Can you please like and share the video? And also, can you please press follow on our page? This is a new venture with myself and Dr. Finbar Markey, Compass Media, and we hope that it will be a platform that will grow. It will really be a community media platform that people will be able to come on and, I suppose, have their voice heard. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and until we meet again, Danut de Arif Galer.
Slán.
Slán.